Thank you. Thank you, Bill, and thank you, Steve, for running it. Global Connections TV has over 400 interviews. To globalconnectionstelevision.com to take a look. And thank you, Bill Miller, a member of our board of directors, for this great work. And thank you, John and Carol. This is great. Now for our question and answers for the remainder of the hour, we have two well-qualified executives with us live. So thank you, Kate Rapp. Kate is an expert consultant in the office of the director of the Peace Corps. She has been a Peace Corps country director in Paraguay, Peru, Caribbean, Honduras, and also has been on staff in many capacities over the years. She is well known and well loved among the Peace Corps agency. Victor Barnes joined Rotary in 2013 as Director of Program and Grants. He oversees the Rotary Foundation's district and global grant making and associated streams. He oversees Rotary youth programs, service and project partnerships, member engagement tools, Rotary fellowships and action groups, the Rotary Peace Centers, of which I'm honored to be on the interviewing committee there, and programs of scale. And he still gets to go home at night, I hope. Thank you both, Kate and Victor, for being here live with us right now. Obviously, you're both qualified to handle any questions that come our way. And Charlie, as you collect questions in chat, and please we'll ask everyone and put your questions in chat. I have a few to start with. First of all, Kate, the most obvious question that everyone asks every week, even with the pandemic growing again, what is the status of the Peace Corps volunteers returning to the countries?
Mm-hmm. Thanks, Kim, and thanks for everybody on this call. There's some familiar faces. I was going to say old faces, but I guess I'll say familiar faces across the different screens. And I will say that this is a question that is asked by many folks. As you know, we have a series of different, we call them buckets of individuals who have indicated interest about returning. We have the 7,000 that were evacuated in March of 2020. We have a group of people that were already in the pipeline to go. And we have folks that continue, even with the evacuation, continue to apply. So we are working with each one of those to find a balance of finding out what countries might want to have in the light of changes that have happened in their post. What will be our core work when the volunteers return, and partner that with the skills that volunteers who have applied will bring to the table. And then, of course, we just are watching on a daily basis the situation with COVID. We had two countries in line. One was Belize and one was St. Lucia. And we have a whole series of tripwires, if you will, that will allow us to move ahead or not. And in both of those cases, we were hoping the end of November would be a date for some of those volunteers to return. But at this juncture, we're now looking at early 2022. And I will say, for many of you who were volunteers around the world, one of the other things that we're looking at is the medical hubs. Those of you that served in Asia, if there were serious health issues, you were flown to Thailand. If you were a volunteer in some parts of Africa and there was a serious medical issue, you were flown for initial health care to South Africa. All of those are becoming very fluid in terms of their ability to receive folks coming in from other parts of their regions. So our hope is that early calendar year 2022, we will start to see the numbers of volunteers being able to go, that door to open and for folks to start to go along. I will say, Kim, that, and again, I see some folks on this call that have participated. We have tried to continue to meet many of our responsibilities and commitments with agencies around the world, partners around the world. And we did have a virtual program that was launched in October of 2020. We had 240 returned Peace Corps volunteers that served in that program. They literally volunteered because they were called volunteer members. They were not volunteers because they were not in official status as Peace Corps volunteers. And they volunteered in their literal free time, 5 to 15 hours a week, to support organizations around the world. And it has allowed us to feel that we have continued to meet many of our responsibilities and our commitments. There are a number of other things that have been going on, and I'll hold to see what other questions you might want to cover before I talk about what staff has been doing during this pause.
And I think Carol also mentioned that some of the countries are even reevaluating what sectors they want to be in. So there's a lot of moving parts here. Is that correct?
That's correct. And in each country, the staff that's in place, and we're very fortunate that the staff has been able to stay in place. They are, once it became safe for them to be out and about, visiting communities, speaking to local and national counterparts, they're reassessing what work might look like, or modifications that our usual sectors might have going forward.
Thank you. Victor, since Rotary's areas of so closely, virtually the same as the Peace Corps sectors, do you have any suggestions on the best way to partner together in these areas?
Yeah, I mean, I think you mentioned a couple of them earlier around our newest area of focus is the environment, and then looking at some of the more pressing areas around refugee relief. I think one of the ways that is easiest for Peace Corps volunteers, even those Peace Corps volunteers who currently find themselves in their home in the United States and not actually in the field, is to work with our Rotary Action Groups. And those Rotary Action Groups are affinity groups made up of Rotarians and non-Rotarians. And there are a couple that I would recommend Peace Corps volunteers who are interested either in the environment or in peace and conflict resolution and or refugee relief to look into. One is the Rotarian Action Group for Refugees, which is a brand new Rotarian Action Group based out of Washington, D.C., but it functions virtually. It's headed up by an individual at the World Bank and is represented by a really impressive array of individuals who have expertise across international development capacity. And it's kind of, it also complements a new Rotary E-Club, which is the E-Club for International Development. Again, that's kind of a crossover in some ways. So Peace Corps volunteers would have the opportunity to join a Rotarian Action Group without actually joining Rotary, or they would have the option, if they chose, to join an E-Club, which then gives them the mobility to be in South Carolina, as opposed to having to be in a physical presence in Washington, D.C., and still work on issues related to international development. The Rotarian Action Group for Peace obviously is a club, is a Rotarian Action Group that is very much focused on looking at issues related to peace and conflict resolution. And then there are two Rotarian Action Groups that are now focused on the environment. The Environment Sustainability Rotarian Action Group, which is a relatively new group. It's been around for about 2 years and is very much engaged with our new area of focus in helping to define the work of Rotarians within the environment. And then a long-standing Rotarian Action Group, our Water and Sanitation Rotarian Action Group, which has been doing environmental sustainability work in the water and sanitation sector for quite a long time. A third way that the Peace Corps volunteers, once they return to country, may want to get involved would be through our Rotary Community Corps. So Rotary Community Corps is a relationship between communities where Rotary is present and individual networks within those communities that are mobilized around an issue of importance in those communities. It's a nice intersection between perhaps what Peace Corps volunteers are doing with their communities and the ability to interface with Rotary in the achievement of those activities. So again, I would suggest that that's another opportunity for collaboration around the whole range of issues that Rotary and Peace Corps are interested in. And if folks want more detail on those programs, they can write rotary.service@rotary.org, and we'd be happy to provide more information and contact information on those programs.
That's great, Victor. And you know, again, it's just connecting the people. The National Peace Corps Association had their affiliate group annual meeting on Saturday, and several refugee groups and a lot of RPCVs are mobilizing on the refugee issue, just as well. So maybe, you know, just connecting those groups and going to each other's meetings and find out how best they can support one another would be great.
Yeah.
Let me turn it over to Charlie. And Charlie, it looks like you're getting a lot of questions. Consolidate them. Go ahead, Charlie.
There are a few. First one I'd like to start off with, going to Kate, and also a follow-up to Victor would be, can you explain a little bit more about Peace Corps third goal, and how do you see the partnership and relationship to third goal at the grassroots level?
Oh my goodness. We blame Rotary all the time for doing so much work in the area of third goal. So you know, one of the things that we've been doing is looking at individuals across the country in a variety of fields that are doing incredibly creative and innovative work. And you know, when we look and as they say, you know, dig down a little bit more, we realize that they are returned Peace Corps volunteers. And then if we dig a little bit more and we ask a few more questions, oftentimes they are Rotarians. And one of the things that we have been encouraging people to do is sort of declare both. You know, they are returned Peace Corps volunteers and they are also Rotarians, because we find that, and this is not only asking them, but asking other community members, be it the school, be it the local mayor's office, local chambers of commerce. They speak to the fact that returned Peace Corps volunteers, and often it is a combo, it is a returned Peace Corps volunteer and a Rotarian, bring a different energy and a different thoughtfulness and a different ability to bring people together who are different and share different opinions. And so, you know, we really have watched in awe, I will say, all of the activities that Rotarians have found themselves involved in across the country, and many of them return Peace Corps volunteers.
And just to contribute a little bit more to that, in case you didn't serve as a Peace Corps volunteer, the third goal is about bringing the experience back home and using it within your community. Well,
thank you. Yes, and again, it is as was mentioned earlier, you know, trying to look for ways to be able to draw from your own experiences those things which you believe your community can appreciate and grow from it back here in the United States. And we see that in terms of family, community, and workplace.
And I would also add to that too, for those of you who didn't serve, all of us who did serve are not Peace Corps alum or ex-Peace Corps. We are returned Peace Corps volunteers. We are tasked with continuing our service when we get back home. So with that in mind, Victor, you served as a Peace Corps volunteer. How do you see the third goal in relationship to your Rotary experience?
Yeah, I mean, I think that exactly what Kate was saying is that it's kind of in your, once you've been a Peace Corps volunteer, it's in your DNA to sort of engage with the community and to understand from a very different perspective than a lot of your cohort, some of the development issues that we see on a regular basis. Personally, I went from Peace Corps into graduate school and then into USAID and then CDC and then ultimately into Rotary. And it was a natural transition of moving from one service entity to another. And I think that first of all, what I see at Rotary is that a significant number of my staff at Rotary are returned Peace Corps volunteers. And then at the same time, there's an equally significant number of Rotarians who are also returned Peace Corps volunteers. And so the synergy between those two programs is really what led to the discussion around having this joint partnership and figuring out how do you capitalize on these shared values and the interest of those individuals in moving agendas forward in terms of equity and peace and international development. So I think it cuts across all of our areas of interest. And as I was saying before, you don't necessarily have to be a Rotarian to engage with Rotary. There are many opportunities to do that outside of the actual formal structure, or you can choose to become a Rotarian and engage. So, there's a plethora of ways in which you can continue to serve.
I would certainly agree with that. A question that had been in the chat, and I'm not sure if everyone's reading the chat, so they might not know. A question came up: how would a Rotary Club who wants to hear from a local Peace Corps volunteer find and connect with someone willing to present a program? Probably maybe falls, I guess this question kind of falls to both of you, but I would also then throw in, I know that the recruiters have been tasked with getting in front of Rotary clubs too.
Yeah.
So go ahead, Kate. There's a really easy way for folks to figure out where Rotary clubs are located and how to reach out to them. And that's on Rotary.org. And then once you get to Rotary.org, you would just type in Club Finder, and Club Finder will allow you to find a club within the community or the area that you're trying to work in, and give you access to information on how to contact that club. Again, the other way to do that would be to work through my staff and go to Rotary.service@Rotary.org, and then my staff could also facilitate that opportunity.
That's great, Victor. If you could put that link into the chat, that would be helpful too, if it isn't already there.
The other side of the coin, recognizing how critical Rotary groups have been in terms of recruiting, motivating those who have been invited, hosting events for groups of volunteers that are leaving the country, welcoming back volunteers who have served. The recruiting office at Peace Corps has built a strategy, and I know that a number of you on the call have been on calls with Carrie Carmichael, who's a recruiter out in California, and trying to look for ways to streamline that ability for the connection to be made. And so you can also I'm going to ask maybe my colleague, I don't know, well, I'll try to get before we finish here, the most streamlined email for you to contact, but they're looking for a way to strategize over the next year to more intentionally engage more and more Rotary clubs. Thank you. Thank you, Jessica. All right.
There's a question kind of back up to Kim's earlier question, a question about, I would be interested in knowing specifics around how some geographies are dealing with COVID and how does that affect Peace Corps decision-making in looking at reopening Peace Corps posts?
Are you talking, I mean, in terms of our overseas posts?
Yes.
In that geography, yeah. So, I mean, again, I wish I could say that there was one, one region that might find volunteers returning more quickly than others. To a certain degree, going back to the point I made earlier about medical hubs, in the case of Latin America and the Caribbean, we use the United States as our medical hub. And so there's potential that if the COVID statistics in our countries across Latin America and the Caribbean either improve or stay or sort of hold, then we will be able to consider sending volunteers in small numbers, but growing upon those numbers, because we'll be able to use the United States as our medical hub for any real emergency.
Kate, some of the questions coming in seem to definitely be heading in your direction here. And I've got a really kind of juicy one here in a way. How is Peace Corps funded, and how does it maintain its independence from other government agencies or political powers wanting to use its influence for their missions? As a government agency, how does Peace Corps accept monetary contributions from private groups such as Rotary? So there's a lot to unpack there.
There certainly is. Let me see. Well, I will start with our budget. Our budget comes from the U.S. government. We have for fiscal year 2022 a budget currently of $410.5 million. It's always interesting. We were just talking about this today. For us, that is, a flatlining, but considering, that we stand ready to bring volunteers back into the country, we're appreciative that the House at least has to this point maintained our budget. It's very interesting. There many years ago was a document that was prepared by the Secretary of State, which laid out the relationship between, because particularly where the mixing of sort of messages takes place usually was at the country level. And so a letter went out from the Department of State defining, that Peace Corps was a very unique presence at country levels around the world. And we talk about the various roles that the Millennium Challenge Corporation or USAID or the State Department itself, each one of them has a very unique way of engaging and supporting development goals around the world. We are very fortunate that, and we also are very fortunate that there are so many returned Peace Corps volunteers in the State Department, at USAID, and other international organizations who understand from their own service that there needs to be this fine line, complementary, but fine line between the Peace Corps and the Peace Corps volunteers' role in a development scenario in each country compared to the other players. So we have been very lucky that we've been able to maintain that. The memo of understanding that Kim mentioned earlier, that is the way that we're able to define how resources might be received and utilized. So within any memo of understanding, it will be quite well defined what these resources are for, how they can be accessed by volunteers. And we have an office that tracks all of the resources that go out to grants, and they hold both the volunteer and the post staff accountable for the reporting on those resources.
Thanks, Kate. Kim has told me that that is going to be our last question. I did have one other question here, and I'll read it and I'll comment quickly on it. What are the types of activities that have the greatest potential for success for this partnership? For example, microloan facilitation might be one. What would be the top activities to consider? And I would just kind of suggest that so much of what Rotary clubs do are done at the grassroots level, and because of that, it really kind of is up to you. And it's like, what is your forte, and how can you apply that in a project working with Peace Corps volunteers overseas? And I would also like to say, if we did not answer your question, please send it along to info@partneringforpeace.org, and we can do a follow-up with you later. And with that, Kim, I'll turn it back over to you.
Well, thank you, Charlie, and thank you, Kate and Victor, for great time, great answers. Be sure to join Partnering for Peace